In this lesson, we will look at how to create striking compositions, especially in that vertical format that is so effective when we view content on our phones. I think the last 10 years or so have probably changed the way in which images and videos are composed forever. In 2022, over 60% of all website traffic was from mobile phones, and this is increasing all the time. So if you want your visuals to be attention-grabbing in this modern world, you need to cater for mobile phone users and people viewing content vertically. Your aim is to create impactful visuals, which usually means taking up as much space as you can on people's phones. By creating vertical or portrait images and videos, this is a huge shift from how photos were classically taken, and it's always worth keeping that vertical composition in mind when you're shooting for social media. Instagram moved away from its original square-only format and now allows photos with an aspect ratio of 4:5 to be posted. To my mind, these are way more effective than squares, as your image is closer to filling the viewer's screen. They're less likely to get distracted by the image or video above or below yours. So we're going to have a look at some effective compositions for social media. I have found that there's nowhere to hide in these small rectangles, and a bad perspective or weak composition really stands out. I think the fact that I learned to be a photographer basically on Instagram is what has made me so tuned in to composition and its importance. Composition comes naturally to some people, but if you're not one of them, all is not lost. This is all stuff that can be learnt. There are some basic rules of composition which are really useful to know, and we'll run through these. It can be helpful to have these noted down somewhere to refer to if you're feeling a bit stuck with where to start. Rule of thirds is probably the #1 rule for composition, and definitely one to remember. If you imagine dividing the space up into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, the grid lines on your phone can help with this if you need them. We are aiming to have the subject matter on one of those third lines. So imagine the horizon in a landscape photo lying along the third line, or in a portrait, your subject's eyes where the 2 third lines intersect. This leaves what we call the negative space in the rest of the frame. The negative space is the space around the subject, which helps us to focus on the subject of the image, or the positive space. Negative space doesn't have to be empty. It might be filled with interesting clouds in the sky, or a texture in a wall, or water or sand, but it should lead the eye into the image and to the focus of the photo. Leading lines are lines that converge or come together and are incredibly effective at drawing the eye into the frame and to the subject of the photo. Some situations lend themselves really well to leading lines, such as tree-lined walks, piers, train tracks, and narrow streets such as the one we have here. I think photographers always get quite excited about finding leading lines, as they do make really great and striking compositions. A central composition is when the subject matter is placed exactly in the middle of the frame. This can work well with leading lines, and also with a more two-dimensional composition with one simple subject matter. It can be really effective to make the frame very symmetrical and have the subject matter right there in the middle. Sometimes we can eliminate that negative space entirely and totally fill the frame with the subject matter. This works really well with repetitive patterns or textures, such as market stall produce, flowers, or a texture again, such as sand or water or an interesting wall. In some cases, photos that fill the frame are actually quite minimal, as you may be making a simple texture or pattern the whole focus of your image. Alternatively, we can make more minimal compositions by increasing the negative space. Look for simple compositions with only one subject matter, and experiment with pushing the subject matter towards the edge of the frame more. Often a great composition is a combination of 2 or more of these rules. So don't be afraid to experiment with your compositions. That's the beauty of digital photography. I will often reframe a shot and try something different, and sometimes you don't know until after you've edited them which you prefer. Let me show you an example. This narrow street is a great example of how a central composition should really work. We've got really nice leading lines which almost lead to a vanishing point at the end of the street. But actually, as you can see if I take this photo, this wall on my right is not actually that interesting, and there's sort of quite an ugly fence up there. So what I'm going to do instead is actually take a couple of steps this way and try and reframe the shot so that the viewer's focus is instead on these lovely colourful facades to my left. So now those leading lines are still there, but instead of going to a central composition, they actually go to more a rule of thirds. And we've got all this visual interest leading the viewer's eye right down to the end of the street. It can be overwhelming when faced with a busy scene and not knowing where to start with composing a photo. I find it helpful to look at the scene and just take a few moments to think about what it is that we're trying to capture here or convey to the viewer. That will help you to narrow down what's important to include in your composition. Look for interesting factors in your surroundings and think about which rules of composition might work. Can you shoot through some leaves, for example, or foliage to create a natural frame? Or are there any leading lines to draw the eye in? Both of these are great tools for pulling the viewer's eye into the photo. Always try and watch out for what is happening in the background. You may be able to tidy up the background by taking a few steps one way or the other, perhaps hiding a bin behind some foliage or walking forward a little to crop out some unsightly cables. Always make sure you look after your perspectives. It's worth taking a moment to get your lines as straight as you can when you take the shot. Although we can do things to correct them later in editing, if they're too far out, then you'll find the rest of the photo distorts. So it's worth taking a little longer at the moment. Try changing your perspective. It's not always possible to get higher up, but sometimes standing on a bench or a wall will give you a different view and a better perspective. Also, crouching down low can minimise the foreground, which can help to crop out distractions. It's worth keeping in mind that Instagram crops your photos to a 4:5 ratio. Although you don't lose much from an iPhone photo, you will lose a little bit from the top and the bottom of your frame, so make sure there's nothing really important happening in those areas. Rules are, of course, there to be broken. Sometimes the winning composition is a really unexpected one that on paper shouldn't work. But like with everything, I think it's good to understand the rules before you start to push the boundaries. Finding killer compositions can take a bit of practice, but the more you do it, the more it'll become second nature. You'll begin to notice things you wouldn't have previously, and before you know it, you'll be reversing into bushes, trying to frame your perfect shot. Have fun experimenting, and don't be afraid to take 10 different angles if you want to. Composition really is one of the key elements in crafting truly engaging photos, so go out and have fun, and hopefully these suggestions give you a good starting point before you unleash your own creativity. This video was a free preview of the Instagram Academy course. In this course, we'll delve deep into everything you need to know about mastering Instagram. Whether you're just starting out on the platform or looking to elevate your game, you'll be equipped with the tools and knowledge to make your content truly stand out. I will guide you through building a compelling profile, crafting engaging captions, and of course, showcasing your unique style to attract your ideal audience. If you're keen to elevate your presence on Instagram and truly shine, please explore the full version of my Instagram Academy course. You'll find the link in the description right next to this video. Click on that link and I will see you inside the Instagram Academy.